What is going on, everyone? This is my first live stream, so hopefully I'm going about doing this right. I had to put together the little intro video and everything like that, but hope to be able to do this a little more often. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. Basically, there are the weekly Heritage comic auctions that I talk about all the time, and they happen on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. and Monday nights at 7 p.m. And so kind of I was thinking that this would be a fun time to just come on, do the live stream, have the auction going on next to me, talk to people in the chat, in the comments, and see, what's going on. So let's see. I'm again, I am a little new to this, so I want to make sure that I've got this gets all right. And I see a comment, hello, L Green Machine. So good to see some people are in here. And so what I thought I'd do first is I would just go over some books that I picked up this week, and then we'll get into that Heritage auction. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, I can go over those. And then I had a couple topics I thought I'd talk about too, just to kind of go over some things while the auction's going on. So I picked up, or I opened a number of books this last week. Sometimes I buy them over time, and I have the boxes kind of stack up for a little while. And I don't like doing that as much with raws, but unfortunately, I've been buying a lot more raws recently than slabs. And so I have a number of raws, and it's risky when you do that, because if there's something wrong, if there's a missing page or a cutout or color touch, or it's like way overgraded or something like that, I feel guilty trying to do a return if it's been too long. So I like to try to open those as soon as I can, or I feel like yeah, so I'm trying not to buy anything tonight. That's the other big plus of doing this. It distracts me a little bit, OA Comics, because I bought some stuff yesterday, and I don't really want to buy anything else today. So I thought I'd show a couple of the books I picked up recently. I didn't do these two in an unboxing video because I just a couple days ago sent my books out to the presser to be graded, and there was one in there that I really wanted to get graded, and so I opened it up quick. I didn't have time to do a video for it, and that was Superman 61, which is the first appearance of Kryptonite. It's a pretty big key, but it's actually a book that I don't feel like it gets enough attention, and it's kind of got it's not a great cover, and so that's one of the things that hurts it a bit. But there were a couple other books in there too, and this one was Adventures into Terror, number 29, which is just kind of a pretty cool like vampire type cover, and not a high grade copy. I think I graded it like a 3.0 or so after I opened that one up. And then another cool one, there's a number of awesome covers from this run. This is Dark Mysteries number 11. And so you've got one of these great skeleton covers. There's another issue where there's a woman that's kind of like on a stretcher. That's I think the biggest book from this run. But Dark Mysteries number 11, just some cool pre-code horror stuff. And then, so I did that video recently where I did some grading, and I've got the other half of it that I need to put out. But because after I filmed it, it was like an hour long, and I was like, nobody's sticking around for an hour of grading books. So I decided I would cut it in half. But so I picked up those books as well. And so one of them was this Avengers number 25, just an incredible Doom cover. I feel like it's an underrated Doom cover. He looks pretty awesome on that one. I'm never a huge fan of like the Kirby hands that they do with the heroes on there, but Doom looks awesome. And I actually picked up 2 copies of that one. So I had 2 of those. And then I picked up a copy of Fantastic Four number 77, which is a great Surfer Galactus cover. There's just a lot going on this cover, and that's something I really like about this one. And it's a decent copy. I think I have it about a 6.57. This is an awesome EC cover. This one's from Jack Kamen. This is Shock Suspense Stories number 10. There's actually another copy of this one up on Heritage tonight, if anybody is interested in this book and is looking to get that one. So there is one that's up for bid, and I think it's pretty low right now. So one that you might want to really be looking at. Now, honestly, I felt like that one was like, this one I felt was undergraded a bit. I felt like the one that's up there tonight is overgraded a little bit. If you do kind of a zoom in, I think they had it at it was like a 6 or a 5.5, and I think it's a 6. And I was like, there's no way that book is a 6. But just something to be aware of, that if you're interested in picking up some EC books, There is a Shock Suspense Stories 10 that's up there tonight. And then I showed this one. I've got a number of copies of this. I want to try to get a higher grade copy one, but I keep everything I have. I think the highest grade is like a 3. And this one is a fully detached cover. It's like a 1.5 to 1.8. But first Shocker. And then Marvel Superheroes number 13. I love this cover. I know Carol Danvers has gotten some hate, since the Captain Marvel movie. But I mean, that movie made a ton of money too. So I'm surprised that they didn't, push for more of that. But yeah, I think this is a great cover. It is an extremely difficult book to get in high grade. And so this is one, if you can find it in high grade, the price just goes almost straight up once you get into the 8.5s, into the 9s. And, but it's just really tough for whatever reason. Issue 12 is a lot easier to get in high grade. You can find a fair number of like 9.2, 9.4 type books, but in this one, 9.4, I think is probably about $5,000 or something. It's really, really expensive. Then a couple more Golden Age books. This was one that I picked up that this is Detective Comics number 106, but this is cool thing about this one is this is the Promise Collection pedigree. So they do sell them raw every once in a while. And so I happen to, but a lot of times it's like obscure titles that they do raw, but every once in a while there's like a big title they do raw. They did a Fight Comics 14, which is a huge book that they sold raw that I was surprised about. But this is just a beautiful copy. On the front cover, it looks like an 8, but there's some staining on the bottom, on the back. And so I'm interested to see how it grades because I'm definitely getting this one graded because it's such a stunning book. And then speaking of Fight Comics, here is Fight Comics number 41. This is I believe this is a Joe Doolin kind of like Good Girl art cover. I showed this one in the grading video, and there's Matt Baker interior art, and there's some really great interior art on this book. There's actually quite a few copies available on eBay if you're looking for copies of this one. And then the last one here was Flash number 147, which is the second appearance of the Reverse Flash, Professor Zoom. Another Flash cover that I really like. It's an homage to Flash 123, but just some DC, a DC key thrown in there too. But let's see, I've got a few comments. So let's see what we got here. So John Diaz says he picked up a copy of ASM 252 double cover signed by Ron Friends, graded an 8.5. I honestly don't see double covers all that often with ASM 252. I'd have to go check GPA what it is, because I feel like an 8.5 is probably a book that runs around 150, maybe 200. But if you add a double cover, one of the things you always need to think about with double covers is often if the outside cover is the better one, that's preferred because that's the one that people are going to see. So when they grade it, if it's in a slab, so you said graded. So when they grade it, they will put both grades on the label, but then the one that goes into the box in the corner is the higher grade, whether it's the interior or the exterior. And it tends to be better if your exterior cover is the higher grade copy. But double covers, it's really it's more of a niche collector group. And so you can definitely get more for a double cover for that rarity, but it often takes a little longer to sell it because you've got to find someone that's willing to pay that extra for it. I'd say often it's around 50% more than what the standard is, but I'd really recommend for things like that, checking GPA to see if there's anything really to reference for prior sales. But let's see what else we got. So Ken B, I have a spare ASM 46 CGC 9.2 on. That is that's a big grade for that one. But yeah, I agree. What you said, Spidey costs have come down 15 to 20% in the last couple of months. That's something I've really noticed, that Spider-Man keys have really been coming down. And that's when to me, that's when you want to buy them. That's why I think people know I sell a lot of books. And usually I have a really hard time keeping Spider-Man books around. They just sell so quickly. There's so much demand for them. But over the last few months, the prices have come down. And so I've just been buying them. And so I have more Spider-Man books than I normally do. And I'm totally fine with that because long-term, I'm very happy to keep Spider-Man books around. And yeah, we got 41 people in the chat. That's awesome. Thanks everybody for joining this live stream. So I thought, well, let's see, what do we got here? We've got recently purchased X-Men 6 low grade. Yeah, I just got an X-Men 6 for the first time. I had never had a copy of that. And mine's a lower grade too. I think it's probably around a 3 or 3.5 as well. So yeah, but I feel like that's one of the ones that might not take as much of a hit after the Black Panther movie. It's gone up some, but not nearly as much as some of those other big Submariner keys. And because it's more just like an appearance in X-Men. It's not like a real key issue for him, but it's a great cover for him. Then we're sending to CGC. Oh, the 2 to 3.5. So for me, when I'm looking at if I'm going to send something into CGC, it depends what your goal is there. So if it's something that you're looking to sell, you want to look at what your cost into it is, and then you want to look at what grading costs, and then what the pressing costs are. Because, and I just want to check real quick what the where the auction's at, because there are some cool books that were going to be coming up. Okay, I think we're still okay. All right, so. But yeah, there are, you look at what your cost is into that book, what the grading costs are, what pressing costs are. And if you add those two together and it's worth less than that combined, you want to rethink sending it in. Because then if you're selling the book, then you're just effectively spending money to lose money. Now there are some times when I have done that. And I see other people on channels talk about that. I think like Dave with Comic Book Investments, where sometimes the book isn't the grade that he expects. But sometimes when books reach a certain value, when they get over a certain value, it's very difficult to sell them raw unless you have kind of a pretty big audience. And so that's where sometimes you have to take the loss if you're just trying to get your money out of it and to get the book graded so that people are comfortable spending that money on it. Because if the book is raw, people might be concerned that it has restoration. They might be concerned that you're overgrading it, that something's missing. And so there's always risks there with buying a raw book. That's why one of the things I've really noticed on Heritage auctions is that raw books tend to sell for around graded prices. And that's a really risky game to play, because yeah, if you've evaluated it and you think maybe the grade is a little higher or something, then that might be worth it. But otherwise you're taking a risk that the grade could be lower, that there could be missed restoration. Because if you've watched my channel for a while, you know that I've had two books that I bought from Heritage that have had restoration. One had trimming and another one had color touch and tear seals that wasn't reported, and I had to contact them. And so that definitely happens, even with something that's a bigger entity that has dedicated graders and all of this. Anything can be missed with raw books. And so you have to be a little cautious with that. Let's see, a number of comments here. I think the market for off-brand pop culture characters like Alien, Predator are heating up. What do you think? Well, with books like that, I think you kind of have to look at the history and see what they've done over time. Now, I know Marvel has regained access to like the Alien properties, that kind of thing. I've heard that I think they're doing RoboCop again. I'm not sure, but those ones, I feel like you really do need to have something that's putting that in the public eye, because for a long time, those books were largely overlooked outside of a few exceptions. So for me, I always really liked the Aliens. I like the Alien properties. I always really liked Predator. I think the Predator first appearance, that cover is awesome. The Alien, I love that the first Aliens #1, where you've got them coming out of the ceiling, because that's what scared me when I was a little kid. That's what I remember from watching that movie, and it scared me for years. So for me, those are ones that I just have a connection to, so that's why I like those. But I'm not really so much speculating on those types of books. It's just that would be more something that if it's something that interests you, then I would go for it. Let's see here. Yeah, so for me personally, I like the variety that they're putting out there. I know like some people have been giving crap about like She-Hulk and stuff, but my wife and I, we both love She-Hulk. We have really enjoyed that show. We think it's funny. I've enjoyed it. I've liked the content of it, and I like that it's something a little different, because if you watched one of Mickey Swagelhaus's videos recently, where he's talking about the number of properties that are coming out now. It's with Marvel, it's like 8 or 9 properties per year. I mean, it's a ton. And so if it's all just like straight superheroes, I think you get burnt out on it. It's just too much. And so I like having this variety in there. So that's me. Let's see. Got an X-Men, a 7-0 X-Men 11. What are the chances you think we'll ever see Stranger in the MCU? I don't know. I don't know if we'll see the Stranger in the MCU. I feel like that would, if we do, it's going to be like maybe a short cameo or something like that. But I would focus on the other keys that are around it, like 9, 10, 12, 14 personally. But let's see. There's a few X-Men ones on Heritage coming up in a few minutes. Yeah, those, well, they'll be up in like 2 hours probably. They'll be up in a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to throw up the Heritage auction. So if you're not familiar with Heritage, so the reason I thought the Heritage one would be fun to just kind of like sit here and watch with, with people, have it going on the side, is because the Heritage auctions feel a little more spectator friendly than the other auctions. Because if you've got Comic Link, it's just like scrolling down through the listings, whereas this one, it's like one listing and then it shifts over. And so you have each thing, one at a time. And then you've got the Comic Connect ones are virtually impossible to watch because they add time to the listing when you bid, but then it still continues on to the next item. And so it's very difficult for watching multiple things on Comic Connect. But Heritage, they stay on that one item until you move on to the next one. And so that's something that I just like about this. And so it makes it, for me at least, something that's a little more, I don't know, it's almost even more enjoyable to watch. Now, these ones are not live auctions in terms of like a person doing the selling. If you want to watch the people doing the selling, then those are their signature auctions. So they have those about every 2 to 3 months. And so that's when you actually have live auctioneers, live bidding, that kind of thing. But that's when you also have the really, really big books. Now, I'm not saying you can't have big books in these weekly auctions. I've seen it was like a 9.2 or 9.4 X-Men 1. It went for like 250,000 and it was in a weekly. Now, the thing that I've noticed with weekly auctions, so just kind of some things that if you're interested in getting into this kind of stuff, is that books that are over around 30,000, it's kind of like 20 to 30,000. Those don't do very well from my experience in the weeklies. It's just, there aren't as many people watching. It's not as highly advertised, but books that are, those books that are really expensive do much better in their big signature auctions, because when they have those, let's see if I've got one back here. So they send out these, these big pamphlets. If you buy from them, they start sending you this material. And I buy plenty from Heritage. So, and it's just like these like booklets of, all the listings and everything. And so you can check them out ahead of time. And so they have a lot of prep time and advertising that goes into those bigger auctions. And so that's just something that if you, I don't know if anybody in here is selling books that are expensive, but if you are, I would recommend one of their, if you were going to use Heritage, their signature auctions. Now, the tricky part with selling, because I've had a number of people ask that, where I would sell. Now, I sell on eBay. I use fixed price listings. I don't like having the risk of an auction. I don't like not knowing where it's going to go, because I know that I often get some really good deals on auctions. Now, you can also have the other side of it, where you can have something sell for way more than you expect, but you can also have the worst side. And so I don't like taking that risk. And so I do fixed price. But for auctions, Heritage tends to be the most expensive in terms of fees. Now, you can, depending on how much you're selling, that kind of thing, you can negotiate fees with them. So it's not necessarily it's like 30 or 40%, because they take the buyer's premium and they take a seller's premium. And so the buyer's premium is 20%. And I don't know exactly what the seller's premium is. It's between 10 and 20. And so that's like 30 to 40% off the top if you don't negotiate it down. Whereas Comic Link is 10%, Comic Connect is like 10%, and sometimes they have a buyer's premium on a couple of the listings. And then you've got things like Hakes that I'm not sure what their percentage is. I think it's around 10. But yeah, so let's see. question here. Do you collect any McFarlane Spider-Man? What are your thoughts about these? Not rare, but I know you love cover art. I don't really. Well, I guess I do have a 316. 316 is one of my favorite covers. It is just. I mean, it's an awesome Venom cover. It's the McFarlane Venom cover. I've wanted a 9.8 ASM 300 for a while, but it's just I keep waiting on it because I feel like the prices are coming down on that book, and so it's one that I'm watching to see where I feel like it's going to kind of bottom out before it turns up again. Because it's a super popular book. It's very in demand. I think most people would want an ASM 300. A lot of people have multiple copies of it, but it spiked a ton into that Venom movie, like everything else. And I feel it's just been trending down. And so it's one that I'm not in a huge rush to go and pick up right now. Let's see. New to your channel, are you a dealer or collector? So I would classify myself as a dealer just based on the volume that I sell. So for me, I sell, like I said, I sell regularly on eBay. I most of the time I am buying to sell, but I do also collect books. I have a rule that I've talked about on the channel a number of times, and I've been thinking of cutting it down some, but I do what's called, I have a 50 keepers list. And so I've talked with other people. A lot of people have some different variations on that. Some people it's like 25, some people it's 100, 500. If you watch ETA Nick before his channel ended, he had 500 keepers books, and he was always talking about his keepers, and he was doing those videos on that. So I do 50. And so that basically they're always in competition with one another. So if I get a new book, it is I'm putting it up against the other books that are in my keepers list to see if it's going to take one of those slots or if it's going to just go up for sale. But that's, for me, that's a way that I keep everything in control, and I try to manage the business side and the collector side of things. And again, yeah, thanks everybody for commenting and joining. It's awesome having everybody in the chat here. Let's see. And we got Mickey in here. So yeah, thanks for joining. Was just talking about you. And yeah, even my kids are burning out, leading indicator of waiting interest. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and I agree. I think part of the problem has been that phase 4 has been very has been very underwhelming. It's hard to compete with what we got closing out phase 3, or like with Infinity War. I mean, it was just and Endgame. I mean, for me at least, Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet saga was my favorite when I was a kid. I grew up around the time when that Infinity crossover was going on in like every Marvel title, and so and that's when I was trying to when I was a kid, I was trying to buy all of those, and so that was something that when I knew they were doing Thanos in this story, I was super excited. And now I feel like they're in this holding pattern where they're not really sure what they're doing. It's just a bunch of properties that are out there. They aren't really tying together all that much. And so that's something where I'm just, I'm hoping that they end up starting to link things together so that that we see what they're trying to do here. Because right now it just feels like a bunch of disparate, properties that don't really link. And I mean, like, I haven't even seen Thor yet. I mean, that's like, I haven't been that motivated to watch some of the properties that they put out. I haven't seen Thor yet, and I haven't finished Moon Knight. I think I've watched everything else except What If. I watched the first episode of What If, and it didn't really work for me. I've talked about this a couple times. I'm a big anime fan, and I don't like the animation style that they use for What If, and so I just had a hard time watching it. So that one I just kind of gave up on. Really nice Marvel mystery. Oh, did I miss the Marvel mysteries that came up? Let's see. Because yeah, those were some of the ones. Yeah, I did miss those. So I'm curious what those ones ended up selling for. Let's see here. I'm gonna jump back a little bit. All right. So let's see. All right. I don't know where that. Oh, there are a couple of the Marvel mysteries. So we had the Marvel Mystery 18 that sold for $3,840. And then the Marvel Mystery 76 that sold for $1,920. I don't remember what I had for those ones as their expected prices. So let's take a look real quick. Because I'm sharing that screen, but I'm looking at my. So if you're not aware, what I do when I talk about these weekly Heritage comic auctions, I price out. This week I priced out like 175 books. I think I price out between 175 or 150 to 250 books usually per week, all different keys across all different ages, and I keep track of their record prices as well as what I expect them to sell for, and I use that to make a lot of my other videos. And so the prior record for Marvel Mystery 18 was 3,220, and it sold for 3,840. So that one set a new record by $640, almost 20, maybe exactly 20%. And then the other one, I think this one hadn't sold for a while because you can see if you can see it. Yeah. All right. So that makes it a little easier. So this is one of the later ones. So I've talked about Marvel Mystery Comics quite a bit. It's a run I really like, but there is a big split in the run where you have pre-World War II and post-World War II. And so this is one of the post-World War II books. You can see it's 1946. They're usually fighting gangsters or criminals or something like that. And so that's exactly what they're doing here. Those are not as desirable as books like this one, which is from the World War II era, which is 1941. Now, this one doesn't actually have any content on it that's like Nazis or anything like that. I mean, you kind of have some hooded guys in the back here, but not really. But there are other issues that are around this time period where you do, and those tend to be the most in demand. But yeah, I love the Marvel Mystery Comics run. They are tough to come by, and I've talked about this where I feel like if places like Heritage and Comic Link, Comic Connect, these auction houses didn't exist, you might never see them. I mean, there's often less than 50 out there. And when you think about, at least graded, and when you think about that, you go, that's like one per state. You know, like what is the likelihood that you're going to walk into an LCS or in, a collection or something like that and find one of those books? And it is extremely low. Let's see. So we've got Mickey. I found Heritage auction site a bit confusing. We just need to spend more time on it. Yeah. So I thought I'd maybe talk about that a bit. Not that I want a bunch of competition on the site, but I feel like it might help me slow me down from buying some. But basically, you register for an account, and then it can be sometimes a little difficult to find the auction you're looking for. But when you go to their homepage, let's see here. Let me go to this one. So when you go to their homepage, they'll have a whole bunch of different stuff on here. But as you scroll down, they'll have their auctions. And so when one goes live, this is the one we're in right now, and it's telling you that this live auction is now. When you're within 24 hours, they'll give you kind of little warnings down here. Now, the thing that can be tricky is sometimes the one you want isn't displayed here. And so you can either go to the auction schedule here, or you can just click load more. You scroll down some more, click load all, and then you just keep scrolling until you find the one you're looking for. Like this is already the one for next week. So this is next weekend's comic auction. And you can go into that and you can look at the books that are coming up, that kind of thing. Then once you're in the auction itself, really it's pretty straightforward. It's just they've got two bid buttons. They've got a and I'm not logged in right now, but just to kind of like keep myself from bidding or anything, but you've got basically a full bid on the right and a half bid on the left. You can only use the half bid one time per book. And so when you're bidding, you want to use that kind of, let's see what that Secret Wars 8 went for. 840. That's a strong sale for this book. This book has been selling around $750. And so that's a really strong sale for Secret Wars 8. Now it's one of those things I wonder if people are maybe prepping for Secret Wars, or because I had noticed it had gotten down around into the mid 600s, but it has been coming back up. So something to be aware of. I've been seeing that book get a little stronger again. But going back to this, so you have this one is always available. This is a full bid. And so, but this one is, like I said, a half bid. You can only use it once. And so you want to try to like wait until things are maybe slowing down on the bidding and use that one then. You don't want to use it right away because then somebody will just overbid you and now you're stuck doing full bids the whole time. The other thing to note is you see this down here. It says next bid and with BP. Don't even look at the next bid number. All that matters is the with BP number. If you look at something like GPA or Cover Price or Go Collect, the number that they're reporting is the number with the BP. What BP is buyer's premium. And what Heritage charges is, I believe, it's a minimum of $29. It used to be $19. I think they upped it to $29. And then they, once you get up to where $29 would not be the minimum anymore, it jumps to 20%. And so I think there's a lot of people that have this, there's like confusion that they think that when you're bidding there, that the buyer's premium is like something that's making it so it's way more expensive. But nobody bids at Heritage like that. You bid based on this number, on the buyer's premium number. And so let's see what this, yeah, I'm interested in this one too, because this is a newsstand 9.8 of Marvel Team Up 141, which is that ties for the first black suit. So I think 900 is actually kind of a, that's a good, oh, somebody threw in another. Yeah. So somebody threw in another bid because 900 was a pretty good price for that one, because that one's been selling around 1,000. So that means it went for 960. So, cause it went for 800 plus 20%, which is 160. So 960. But yeah, really when you're bidding, just look at this. Don't think about this other number. And that's what you're bidding on. And that's how you want to bid. So if like GPA says a book said, let's see this next one. If GPA said that this lot of books was worth, $240, you would say, okay, I'm bidding 240. You don't think about that you bid 220 and had to pay extra or anything like that. It's just, that's what you're bidding. So let's see if there's any more questions. Oh, why does Heritage sometimes say bidding closed and then reopen? So it's because there can be lag based on people's internet. And so if something closes and somebody had clicked like right at the last minute and it gets in then that's what would cause you to have that bid come in late. It happens every once in a while, not all that often, but that's why that happens. Let's see. What's your take on graded versus raw? What's your take on graded versus raw comics? I usually get raw copies, but they're saying graded is better. So it's not that graded is necessarily better. Graded just helps give you a defined value for that book. Oh, this was one of the books that I was really looking forward to seeing what it goes for. So this is, let's see. So this is Mr. Mystery number 12, which is a huge pre-code horror book. This one, and let's see, it's already up at 4,080, I think. Yeah, 4,080. Let's see. Okay, so so this one sold for 4,080. Let's take a look at that one. So if you haven't seen this one before, this is like the big book from the I'd say this is the big book from the Mr. Mystery run. There are a couple others that are also really in demand, but this is the biggest one. It's just kind of like the needle. I think it's called like the needle in the eye cover. But yeah, this is in 1953 when these publications just kept one-upping each other, one after another, and you got just crazier and crazier covers, and this is just one of those that's out there. So 4,080 for a 3.0. I'm going to take a look at what I had evaluated that book at. So that one must not have sold for a while. Its prior record was $910 in that grade. And that's one of those kind of interesting things with the Golden Age, is that you can set records easily, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was a strong sale. And so I had actually estimated the price of that book at $4,500. So at 4,080, I think somebody actually probably got a pretty good deal on this book. They got it for what I would estimate around 10% under market. And so I think someone probably got a pretty good price on this one, especially considering how much demand there is currently for pre-code horror. Now, it's still a strong book. Now we can take a look and see. Let's make sure you guys can see my screen. All right. So this is GPA. If you're not familiar with GPA, it's one of these pricing services. And So what you do is you type in Mr. Mystery number, oh, I meant number 12, but it won't matter. We'll get to it. So you type in that. You always have to put the pound sign. And so we're going to go to 12. And so that one was a 3.0. And so you can see here at a 3.0, the record had been $910 back in 2016. Now, I mean, it's 6 years and that book has more than quadrupled. So that's still an extremely strong sale. But when you had a 2.5 that sold for $3,999, you had a 1.5 that sold for $1,997. And so I had estimated that it was going to go a little bit more, just because when you're looking at rare stuff like Golden Age, there's a lot of different ways to estimate prices. One of the good ways, or the easiest ways to do it, is look at the price per point. And so with this one, it's like 1.5, you would divide 2,000 by 1.5 and you'd get the price per point, which would be like, I don't know, like $1,300 approximately. And so you could say that then it's a 3.0 times 1,300, which would be 3,900, but it typically goes as the grade goes up, the price per point increases. And so that's why I had it a little bit higher than that 3,900, but still it was a solid sale. It was not a low sale by any stretch, but still I think somebody got a good price on that one. All right. Let's see. I'm going to check to see if there's some other kind of like big books that are coming up. Let's see. When's that one coming? All right. So in 14 listings, there's a big one coming up that I have rarely ever seen come up for sale. It is the New York World's Fair comic from 1939. And so we can take a quick look at that one. Let me find the number. 11629. So this way I can jump up to it. And so that's this book here. And so this is actually the first appearance of the Sandman, not the modern one, but this older character. But this book, I can't think of the last time I saw this book come up for sale. And this is one of the fun things about these auctions, is you sometimes see some really rare, really big books. And for whatever reason, this week specifically had a lot of really awesome books that came up for sale. And so it was definitely a exciting auction so far for me to watch, just seeing some of these books go up. Like, let's see, one of the coolest ones, 11192, is this one. No, it's not going to let me jump to it. All right, so let's try over here. Okay, so if you haven't seen this cover before, this is Chamber of Chills number 19, and this is one of the top pre-code horror covers. This cover has been homaged a number of times now, but you can see that this one sold yesterday at 2.5 for $10,800. That is about $4,000 per point, this was a very strong sale. I think I had this one estimated around 8,000. And so this was a really big sale, and this book just keeps going up. And this is one of those examples of these big pre-code horror books that just keep selling for more and more. Let's see. I'll just check out some other questions here. I'm going to jump back to the auction. There we go. So would you recommend going after Silver Age DC keys? So I've talked about that a bit recently, where Silver Age DC, the thing that's nice about it is that a lot of it didn't participate so much in the comic boom. And so you can, I'll show this in GPA so you can really see what I'm talking about here. So if we look at like Hulk 180, this is one I talked about in a recent video about, like, is it time to buy this book, basically? And my answer really is yes. At least it appears that way from the numbers. And so if you look at like Hulk 180, you can see that this is that chart, and right here, this is beginning of 2021, and it was just straight up. And you can see we've corrected a lot, but if you draw basically like a straight line of what this book was doing before the comic boom started, we're about at that point right now. And so what that tells me is that it appears the downside risk is a lot lower. Now, could it go lower still? Totally. I mean, anything can happen. I mean, I know a lot of people are concerned about the economy right now and that kind of thing. So anything can happen there. But this is the type of thing that I'm really looking for with books right now, is that I'm looking for books that are around that point, or books that are below that line. And because that then tells me that I don't have a lot of risk. And so with Marvel, that's the type of thing that I'm looking for. Now with DC, oh, I think I'm sorry, I think I was showing the wrong screen. All right, let me here we go. All right, so we'll go back. Sorry, I'll go back to Hulk 180 again so I can give that example. So I was looking at a 9.0, and this happens to be a book that I have a 9.0 for sale. And so I like to try to make that clear so it doesn't feel like I'm trying to persuade people to get something that I have for sale. But I have a lot of books for sale, so I often have overlap. So I try to keep that in mind. But yeah, so this is what I was talking about in my video, is that you have this trend line that was going prior to the comic boom that had been going for a few years. You know, it started in about 2018. This little jump here was probably around when Marvel got the X-Men back, would be my guess, or when rumors started about it, so that people are like, oh, you know, we might be seeing Wolverine in the MCU. And so that you got that little jump there. Then things are just kind of like they're normal, trending up. Then we had the comic boom start right here around early 2021. And you see these just crazy jumps in prices, just huge spikes. And yeah, it's come down a lot now. But if you extend that trend line out, you can see how we're right near where the books are now. And so that's what I was talking about, where it feels like very little downside risk for this book. Now, again, it could go down further, all that kind of thing. But this is when I would be more comfortable with Marvel books. So the question, though, was about, let's see here. Make sure all right. So the question, though, was about DC keys. And so there are some DC keys that did participate in the comic boom. And so if they did, I would be looking for similar trends. I'd be looking for ones that have returned. And I think Hawkman 4 is likely one of them. That one spiked a lot because there was a lot of rumor about like Justice League Dark and maybe some type of Zatanna show or something like that. And so there were a lot of rumors around that character. And so that book really moved a ton. And so with that one, I would be looking at what I was showing with Hulk 180 is, has it come back down? Like, how safe is it for that book to purchase now? Justice League 21, I don't remember if that one spiked all that much. And so that's where, with books that haven't spiked as much on the DC side, I've talked about books like Batman 121, First Mr. Freeze, that kind of thing. Those ones, I think 189 didn't too much either, the first Silver Age Scarecrow. Those are the types of books that if you look for those, then that's where I would feel more comfortable, because they've just continued their gradual trend over time. They didn't really have that comic boom, and I wouldn't be as worried about those. Again, nothing is guaranteed. I always want to make sure I say that. You know, like I've sold books for losses before too. I mean, anything can, happen with comics. It's just like anything else. And so, but you just try to make the best decision you can based on the information you have. How come you don't accept offers? I do accept offers on my books. I just don't have offers turned on. And so the reason I turn those off, so when I first started selling on eBay, it was probably around 3 years ago now, I always had offers on, and I kept getting, you get these, like, you have like $1,000 book up and somebody offers you $100. And I'm just like, I dealt with that for about a year, and I was just like, I'm done with this. so I turned them off, but people can still message you within eBay, and you can send offers through eBay's messaging system. And I do that fairly regularly if I can. I mean, sometimes I have room, sometimes I don't. But yeah, so if there's something you're interested in, if I have room on it, then yeah, feel free to message me on eBay. I do accept offers. I do send offers. It's just that I turn them off on eBay because I got really tired of the low balls. Let's see here. Got a lot of comments here, so I'm going to try to. What happened to ETA? I think he just got tired of YouTube. I think he'd been on here for a lot of years. He had, I think, thousands of videos. I mean, he kept up his channel though, and so his channel is, if you're getting into grading, if you're new getting into grading, I mean, I put out a few grading videos every once in a while. Like I did one yesterday where I walk through some raw books that I recently pick up and then kind of like how I grade them. But he has some incredible grading videos where he goes through. When I first got into kind of grading books, he's who I watched. I got Overstreet to kind of get that initial base of knowledge, and I talked with my brother who's big into comics, and then I started watching ETA Nick. Now, experience is really the best teacher, but he goes through every like half grade. He's like, and goes through examples and all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that he really recommends that is very helpful is going to sites like My Comic Shop and Heritage, because they have really high resolution scans. And so you can see like in this one, now I'm not logged in, so I can't zoom in, but you can zoom in on these and you can get really close. You can see every detail on these books. And then this is a 2.5, and you can get a good idea what this 2.5 looks like. And you can look at a whole bunch of different 2.5s. And then that will help you start to understand what to expect in that type of grade. And so that's something that, you have to put some time in, but it really is helpful. And I still highly recommend checking out his channel, because even though he's not putting out new videos anymore, his grading content is there. I don't think there's anything better on YouTube. Like this, I have 50 keepers too, 50 long boxes. That's what I'm trying to prevent. I don't have room for 50 long boxes of keepers. So that's what I'm really trying to prevent. Let's see. Yeah, my older brother is similar. He has a lot of long boxes. Let's see. I remember you saying you try to avoid racist stereotype covers in Golden Age. You think they have some historical value. So, I mean, yes, they definitely have historical value. It's not something that I'm real comfortable, displaying and that kind of thing. That's why I tend to avoid it. And you'll see like in Marvel Mystery, the Japanese World War II covers tend to sell for less than the equivalent like German or Nazi World War II covers. And I think a big part of it is those depictions that are on the cover. It's just, I mean, I understand why they were doing it then. This was a lot of these books, or most of them were propaganda material. It's to get people to buy war bonds and, all that kind of stuff. And so I understand it, but it's not something that I want to really like put up on my shelf. Do I have any low grade ASM below 15? I do have a couple. I think I have a 5 that's a 1.5. I have an 8 that's like a 1.5 or a 2. Yeah, I have a few of them. Let's see. Are there any books that you're eyeing as we get closer to D23? I mean, really, I'm not big on buying spec. Every once in a while I do. I mean, I won't say I never do. A couple years ago, I bought a ton of like 9/8 Eternals 2, 3, and 1. And I had sold all of them except for a couple I think I have left that hurt to still have now, because that book has come down quite a bit. But I was definitely, because I mean, it was something where, the movie wasn't well received, but if you look at, let's take a look at Eternals. So if we look at Eternals #1, let me make sure I'm sharing the screen right. Yep. Okay. So if we look at Eternals #1 and 9/8, it back in 2019, kind of 2020, when I was buying those, they were around $1,200, and then they jumped up to around 3,000 to 4,000. And so that was, you could sell them for quite a bit. Now the movie really was very poorly received, and in my opinion, justly so. I've talked about that before. I was not a fan of that movie. I know some people are, but I wasn't a fan. But now it's actually below some of these prices from back here. And so I think this is the Eternals are probably something that are worthwhile to at least consider, because Swaglehouse was showing in his video that he did recently about the different properties that are going to be coming out. Eternals, it hasn't been confirmed, but there was a leak that they're already doing an Eternals 2. Now, like he said, maybe they'll rebrand it like Celestials or something like that, but it's pretty certain we're getting them back. And so if you can get these at below prices from back here in 2018, 2019, probably not bad books to keep an eye on. Now, it appears it's still trending down some, so you could have some downside risks still. But yeah, maybe not a bad one to keep an eye on. Another one that I actually have quite a few copies of is Special Marvel Edition 15, because it's pretty clear that Shang-Chi is going to be one of the kind of like a big character moving forward in the MCU, kind of like whatever they're going to do with this version of the Avengers, and the director from Shang-Chi is doing the Kang Dynasty movie. I mean, I feel like there's going to be a lot coming from that character. And so I think Special Marvel Edition 15 is one that I have a number of copies of. And so that's one that I don't mind picking up right now. Let's see. And love your weekly high low. Yeah, thank you. I try to put those out as much as I can, but those ones take a lot of work. It's quite a bit of work to put those together. So I try to put them out as much as I can. Let's see. It seems very rare for an internet bid to not be outbid by a Heritage Live bid. I've definitely seen it happen. I mean, there are times when you see a number that before the auction starts where you're just like, there's no way anybody's bidding on that again. Like, I feel like they accidentally put in too high of a number and it got bid up behind. But yeah, I mean, I think most people, they treat it like an eBay auction. With an eBay auction, people are waiting till the last minute to put in that number because they're hoping not as many people are going to be watching at that time. Let's see what this Raphael 9.4 goes for. I'm a little interested in that one. It actually looks like it got bid up quite a bit. So it went for 840. I think that was the 9.4. Yeah, this is a book that, man, that one has come down a lot. I'm not all that surprised. Let's take a look at that one. I'm not all that surprised because the print run for Raphael #1 was pretty high. I think it was like 60,000. And for the early Turtles stuff, that's pretty high. And so the issue was that if you went back just a couple years, a 9.4, you can see here in 2019 was $250. It went up to $2,000. That is 8 times as much as it was the year prior. That it went up too much. And so, yeah, I feel like it's still settling down some. You can see it's still got this downtrend. I think what happened was there weren't a ton of them graded because really, I mean, look at this, like at a 9.4, only worth $256 and having to deal with CGC's magazine grading submissions, which is slow and just expensive. So I imagine not a lot of them were getting graded, but then when the price jumps to 2,000, everybody is getting them graded. And so you had this big spike as those few that were out there were getting sold. But then as people started getting them back, just the prices just keep coming down. I remember, again, Dave with Comic Book Investments, he was talking about that. He's like, I got a ton of these Raphael #1s, And so I think, just people like that, they had them, stored away because they just weren't worth really grading. But then when the prices jumped like that, they did. And so I think that's what really ended up hurting that book. But I like those big, the magazine size TMNT books. They are some of the ones that I've been looking for kind of like keeper type books. I just think they're really cool, especially if you can get some of the earlier ones. The print runs are a little lower. Like the first and second print of issue 1 are very low. I mean, first print is super expensive. That's tens of thousands of dollars. But the second print, so I think the first print was 3,000 copies. I think the second was only 6. So it was still a very low print run for that book. Then when you go to issue #2, I think it had 15,000 copies, which is still pretty low. And that's the first Mousers. It's an awesome cover. Then you have issue #3, which I think it jumps up to around 30,000. So it starts getting higher as you get to issues 3 and 4. But yeah, I like those early Turtles books. See, as a collector, I'm okay with people burning out and need low prices. Yeah. I mean, as somebody who sells, it hurts a little bit sometimes, but yeah, I fully understand that. Can you roll through some of your top 80s and 90s cartoon comics? I don't know. I mean, for me, it would probably like the cartoons that I can really think of that were going on while I was a kid that would have comics that I would try to collect. One is definitely Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's like one of my memories that's burned in as a kid, was watching that at my grandparents' house. Then the other one would be the X-Men cartoon. Like that's the other one that I really watch. And that's why X-Men books, those ones have been coming back quite a bit. And I might have to look into that, see if that's something that's worth making a video about. Is X-Men books might be starting to get pretty good to be looking at now. Love your Golden Age Fiction House. Yeah, Fiction House has some really great issues, especially during the World War II era. And yeah, thanks. I've been thinking about doing it for a while. I'd had this idea of doing them during the weekly lives. And if people have been watching my channel for a while, I've got these like this Iron Man hat over here. And so I'm big into triathlon, and I'm getting back into my training. And so I've been trying to think of ways where I can continue to put out as much content as I want, but try to do it efficiently. And live streams seem like a way to maybe like help take care of like one video that might be fun to do per week, and work, because once I'm full in, it's a lot of work. it's a lot of time on the bike, especially, and on the treadmill. So let's see. Have you ever gotten a book from someone who won an auction on Heritage and accepting offers on their site? Someone who won it. I'm not sure what that means. So if you can, I mean, I know I'm a little behind, I think, on comments. So if you can mark if you're still on, and you can clarify. I'm not clear what that means. And this one, does the timer get reset for bids on Heritage? Yes. It when someone bids, so we can see up here. We'll see if it happens on this one for She-Hulk. And so what happens is when you get within 5 seconds, you can see this little timer here counting down. If someone bids, no one did there, it would add, it's like 10 seconds. It's probably 8 to 10 seconds. And so then it starts counting down again. And so sometimes you wish you're like, because you see what people will do is they wait till the last second and they bid, and you're just like, just send out the bid, because you get tired of sitting there and waiting. Because there's some books where, especially when they start really low, if a book is at like $3, so it's 3 plus 29, so it's actually $32. Sometimes people will they'll wait, and it'll be like a $1 bid. And it's just, it takes forever. And you're just like, oh gosh, move forward. But yeah, you can see here, it got the fair warning, and then someone bid. And then it counted down, it started counting down again, fair warning, and someone bid. Now, if I was logged in, what you would see is this button here would have the countdown on it. It actually lights up, it's red. And so you can see that countdown coming. So it's very clear that the countdown is happening and that you need to bid. But yeah, so that's why it's, so I saw this here. So yeah, there is a timer reset, but it's, like I said, it's just like 8 seconds. It's not like Comic Connect. That's my problem with Comic Connect. Comic Connect adds 3 minutes. It's brutal. Like if somebody bids and it tacks on, like right at the end, tacks on 3 more minutes, and you're just like, oh, I got to sit here for another 3 minutes. That's why I don't use Comic Connect hardly ever. I hate that bidding style. This one, I don't mind at all, because it still moves forward pretty quick. Really, the rule of thumb I've found is that it takes about 30 seconds per item on average. So if you look at the lot number, and the lot number that you're interested in is like 60 away, you'll probably have it come up in 30 minutes. It's a pretty safe rule of thumb you can use. You might want to give yourself a little buffer, but yeah, that's kind of how I can guesstimate, because I can't always just sit here and watch the auction for hours. You can also set alerts. They have little things where it'll text you when the item's coming up, but it's really far in advance. It's like 15 minutes before the item comes up, and so it's not all that helpful. Let's see here. So it's the New York Fairs comic does not have the typical sticker covering over the price. I'm not overly familiar with that book, so I'm not sure what's normally on that one. But let's see, I think that one would have sold already. Let's see, what did that one end up selling for? So 11629. Let's check that one out. Okay, sold for 3,000. I feel like that might have been kind of a low sale. What did I have it for? Yeah, I feel like whoever got that got a really good price on that one. I had that one estimated at 3,800. It had a record price of 4,578. So I think whoever picked this one up is probably pretty happy with that. The comment was on the price up here. I really like these early DC prices where they've got this like angular box. I have an Action Comics 19 that has one like that. They switched to a circle somewhere around issue 30 and or 27 or something like that. But I really like the look of those angular boxes. But let's see here. Do you think Giant Size X-Men? I think Giant Size rise past the introduction of mutants in MCU, basically. Well, Giant Size X-Men has actually been falling quite a bit, similar to Hulk. Because if you watched my market video I did maybe like a week ago, and Mickey did a Bronze Age, I'm blanking on the name, Bronze Age index. You can see that Bronze Age books are still kind of trending down quite a bit, and so with Bronze Age, I think you have some time if you're looking to pick one up where they might come down some more. But again, if like at D23 you get some big thing where they pull someone on stage and like, this is Wolverine, I think that all bets are off at that point. So you've got to always take that stuff with a grain of salt. If some announcement happens, it could completely reverse any trend. But right now, a lot of those Bronze Age books, they've just been trending down, and it's just because there's quite a few of them out there, and they went up a lot. I mean, those books went up 300% plus. I mean, I remember in early 2020, still kicking myself for this. In early 2020, I think that's when it was. I was bidding on a Giant Size X-Men 1, and it was a 9.6, and it was at like 4,600, and I was like, ugh, that's too much. I was like, I can't go any higher. And I think that book is now around like 18,000 or 19,000, something like that. I mean, it's just, it went up 4 times, 5 times. And so it's not surprising to have those come back down some, because just the prices just got so crazy. Let's see. Would I say FF48 is a good long-term investment regardless of films? I mean, really, the major keys tend to perform, consistently over time. It depends on time periods. They're often, you'll kind of find that if like stock market is doing relatively well, they tend to do relatively well. But you also find, and I saw Dave talk about this as well, they don't really go down so much when you have downtimes in the market. You often have that they're pretty stable during those times. But yeah, I mean, it's a major key. I think it's a decent long-term book. My personal favorite is actually 49. I love the cover for 49. So I think I have a 50, but it's a lower grade copy right now. I don't actually own a 48 right now, but I have a 49 just because it's one of my keeper books. It's one that I kept upgrading it. It happened to be prior to the comic boom, so unfortunately, it's pretty hard to upgrade now because the prices got really high. But I had been upgrading it prior to the comic boom, but now I'm not really willing to spend what it takes to get I have an 8.5, and to get a 9.0, I'm not really excited to spend that much money. So talking about grading, how much of accurate self-grading comes down to beyond the front cover? Everyone looks at the front and back covers and neglects the rest. That's not how it works, is it? So a vast majority of the grade comes from the front and back cover. I mean, you can have some interior flaws that can have impacts on the grade. So if you are if you have missing pieces, I mean, massive impacts, incomplete stories, like a missing page, instant 0.5, or it might get a qualified grade where they say, we're ignoring that. But yeah, so interior can have a big impact if something is missing. But if you have something like tears or whatever, they don't have as much of an impact as you might think they do, like tears on pages, even detached centerfolds. I've seen an 8.5 with a fully detached centerfold. And so I think people sometimes think that these things really have a huge impact on the grade, and they don't. A single staple off the centerfold hardly has, it really hardly has any impact, because usually what happens is if you have that, you already have other damage to the book that's bringing the grade down. And so you don't see that all that often, where you have a really high grade book that has a bunch of like really bad interior flaws. The places where you often see it is like a missing page or a cutout. Like you can get really high grade, like Hulk 181s that are like 9.6 qualifieds or 9.4 qualifieds, because somebody, just cut out that Marvel value stamp, but the rest of the book is just basically perfect. So yeah, the front and back cover really are the vast majority of the grade. I would say, in most cases, like 90% of the grade, but unless you have something missing. Let's see. There's some comments about giant size X-Men. All right, so then we've got, what do you think about a seller carving up an AF-15 to sell pages individually for more than they'd get? Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I understand that kind of thing can happen. There was that, I think was it an Action 1? I think there was an Action 1 that somebody was like super brittle, and somebody ended up just like basically parting it out for all the, there's that Shock Suspense Stories. Let's see what that one ends up going for. Oh man, that's actually a really strong sale. So it's over 300. Oof, yeah, that is a strong sale for that book. Because let's see, what did they grade this one at? Let's see if I can remind myself. Of a 6.5. Yeah, I did not feel that that book was a 6.5. Personally, when I took a close look at that one, that book didn't look like a 6.5 to me. So that's why whenever I'm looking at a raw before I buy it, I'm definitely taking a look at the picture. Like when I'm assessing a book, when I'm pricing out raws, I always take a look at the picture, because I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with the grade that it was given. And remember, like this spine is actually pretty rough. This staple's really rough. This one's really rough. There's some wear on the top. I didn't feel this book was a 6.5 book. That was me, but I could be. I feel like I'm somewhat conservative. I'll often find that I'm about a half grade low on my estimates, which is the way I kind of like it to be, because then, if I miss something, then I have some protection there, and it makes certain that when I'm deciding to send a book in, that it's worth me spending all that money and the time and everything to get the book graded. So I try to be a little bit conservative with my grading. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the parting out books just to make a little bit more money. And I understand that it happens, but no, I'm personally not a fan of that. Let's see here. Can you recommend a Hulk key that isn't one? So I've talked about this actually in a few of my top 10 videos, because I've had Hulk number 1s that have come up that have been big sales, and Hulk number 2s. Hulk 102 is a really good option. That's so if you're not familiar with Hulk number 102, I will show you the picture of that one. So Hulk 102. So this is Hulk 102 right here. If you're not familiar, let me make sure I'm showing the screen. Yeah. All right. So this is Hulk 102, and you can see that, this is when the titled series starts again. So Hulk went issues 1 through 6, and then he went over to Tales to Astonish for a number of issues, and around 40 issues. And then he came back over to, they started his title up again at issue 102. So it's very similar to something like Iron Man number 1, Submariner number 1. What's the other one? I'm blanking on it, but oh, and Captain America 100. So it's very similar to those issues. And so this one, it always feels so cheap compared to those other ones, especially with how much the other Hulk keys have been going up. So that's definitely one to consider if you're looking for a Hulk book. Oh, and this book, I remember this book from my childhood. I think I probably have like 4 copies of that book. Because I still have my childhood collection, or most of it. I have sold a few books from it. I had a Werewolf by Night 32 that I think back in like 1994 or something I bought for like $20. I ended up grading that one and selling that. I did have a few early, like Journey into Mystery. I don't know if I had any Tales to Astonish, but I had some early Journey into Mysteries, like the monster ones, the pre-hero ones. Because my grandparents were antiquers, and they would often get comics and they would bring them back, and we would, like, my brothers and I would split them up. And so I had a few of those that I sold early on when I started selling comics. So let's see here. So GPA tracks some sales history for signed books. Yeah, they do track signed books and list them apart. So let's see, I think I had GPA open. So here you can, up at the top, they have these filters. And so I'm just looking at Universal, but you can add in restored and, well, this is Raphael, so you're not gonna have a lot of them, but you can see it throws in these purple ones here to tell you like this was a restored book. So it has those numbers, or you can throw in qualified. And so then it gives you the qualified grade, the qualified sales, or you can throw in signed. So it has those two. So, let's see here. Clarify Heritage shows items that already have been won in an auction, but the buyer is listing it on the Heritage site. Oh, okay. Yes. So basically you have an option if you've bought something to have it available for someone else to bid on or to make an offer on if they want. And I used to have that on, but my experience was that anytime I got an offer, it was like what I would get when I had offers turned on eBay. It was people throwing out these just ridiculously low offers. And so I turned it off. I don't even use it. It wasn't worth it to me. But yes, I mean, I know people do it, but I haven't found it to be useful. Let's see here. Yeah, 25 cents in 1939 when everything else was 10 cents was not a cheap book. Good to see you in a live chat. Have you heard that CGC has been sent AF-15, ASM-13? So you have Steve Ditko. I had not heard that, but they had the. Who was it? Was it maybe they were Ditko books? There were. Let me see if I can find it because there. Make sure I'm again. I gotta make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. I am not. All right, hold on 1 second. Okay, so there were some early Amazing Spider-Man books that sold for huge numbers. I'm not going to remember what the issues were. Let's see if I can find it because GPA will label them. They'll put like an extra little note next to them usually. Let's see here if they're So this was the Steve Ditko collection, and so I think they already did that. I don't know if there are more, but you can see here like this 6.5 for Amazing Spider-Man number 11 that sold for 1,560 last year. When the 6.5 of the same book, non-Ditko was selling for around 1,000 to 1,100. And so it was selling for, I mean, this was a 50% premium. There were some that went way more than that. Some really huge premiums for those books. So, but yes, so I had seen those, but I think it's already been done unless somebody is sending in more of them. but yeah, they did set records, but that's also why it's helpful that gets broken out separately, because otherwise, yeah, you have to know to check, because yeah, you have to know to check, because otherwise you can think that maybe the value of the book is a lot higher than it is, because people were definitely paying premiums for the fact that it was a Steve Ditko collection. Let's see here. Do you value things like Stanley signature? Okay, so how do you value things like Stanley signatures for Silver Age, Silver Surfer, Amazing Spider-Man 110? It's not easy. You're kind of guessing, at best. But the bigger the key, the more the signature tends to add to the value of the book. It can be thousands. I mean, it can double the value of the book on the right type of books, or more. I've definitely seen that. I've sold Stanley signed books for that type of premium. It's another one of those things where it's a specialized market, similar to we were talking about at the beginning of the stream, double covers or things like price variants. They're specialized collectors, and so you have to find the right person. But when that person comes around, that oftentimes they're willing to pay that premium for it, because it's something that's special, that's harder to find. But not everybody is. I mean, that's the risk with signatures. Some people do not like signatures at all, no matter what. They don't want it on the cover. They don't want it on their book. Now, if it was interior, if it was on like the first page, like they used to, most people won't mind. But there are some people that just would never want a signature on their book. Oh yeah, I agree about this one too. Hulk Annual #1 is an awesome silver Hulk key. That's true. That is another great book. I just sent one in for grading as well. It's an awesome Steranko cover. So yeah, that is definitely one. I agree with that too. So I think have I caught up to the? I think I've caught up to the chat. All right. So let's see here. This one we've got Victor Morrison. I'm confused with Overstreet price guide, as the only thing dealers talk about is graded books. The price, yeah. Well, the prices in the guides aren't even for ungraded books. I think, were we talking about that on? I was on Como's stream on Friday night, and we were talking about Overstreet, because Overstreet's got a new service that they're bringing out called Overstreet Access, and if you are, I don't know enough about it. I've looked at it a little bit, but it's not clear to me if it's just basically going to be their price guide on the site that's then going to be updated maybe like quarterly or something. I didn't get the impression that they're going to be pulling in data like Cover Price, Go Collect, GPA do. And if they aren't, then I don't really see a lot of value in it personally. I mean, right next to me, I've got an Overstreet price guide. This is last year's. I don't have the newest one, but you almost don't really, you don't really need it for pricing. That was one of the things we were talking about on that stream was I was pulling up, let's see which book. It was Punch Comics #12 that we were talking about. So if you're not familiar with Punch Comics #12, it's one of the top pre-code horror covers of all time. It's super expensive. It's like $10,000 a point, basically. And Overstreet has a 4.0 as $6,800. A 4.0 is probably $35,000. I mean, when they've got the numbers like that, what value is it in terms of pricing? I mean, people are saying like there are certain books, like maybe if it's super rare and you can't even find sales data on it, then that's where it's useful. But still, like if that's the value they're giving it, then why do I ever even want to trust it? Because it's not even close. I mean, if something is $30,000 and they're saying it's 6,800, I mean, people talk about, multiples of guide and all that, but it's like, why doesn't Overstreet just update their numbers? Like it's not like they don't know about these other sites. Why don't they? And it's not like dealers don't know about those sites. I mean, that was one of the things we were talking about was like people who are like Overstreet advisors. If they're advisors and providing this data and they're out there selling at shows, they aren't selling a Punch Comics in a 4.0 for $6,800. They're selling it for $35,000. So tell Overstreet to update their prices, and put the right prices in there, because I mean, it would be good. It would be at least helpful if it was right one time a year, but it's not even right one time a year. It's right never. So yeah, that I don't understand why Overstreet prices the way it does. I One of the other things we were talking about is I feel like Overstreet, it would have been great if they would have gotten into the grading game back in like the early 2000s too. I think they could have been a good competitor. But the tough part now is that Overstreet grading, so if you look at their like grading guide, it's not the same as what CGC and CBCS do, because CGC and CBCS, despite what anybody says, it's a lot of times people get entrenched on their sides, but they grade basically the same. There are little differences here and there, but they basically grade the same. But Overstreet has some pretty big differences that are in there. Like they allow replaced staples of the time period and certain, once you get below a certain grade. Whereas if you go to CGC, that's never going to happen. You're getting a conserved label. And in CBCS, I don't know if they'll say restored or if they'll say conserved. I think they'd probably say conserved as well. But so there are things like that that can be very big differences in value based on that type of grading difference. When you're holding a spec book, how do you decide? Well, I mean, so Mickey, and I'm in a kind of like a chat, like we've talked about this, like it's kind of like when you've made money on it, if you should feel comfortable selling it. It's hard not to look back and go like, oh, I could have sold it for more. But I mean, look at all the let's jump to this. Let's jump back to Eternals #1. Let's see here. So with that 9.8 with Eternals #1, I mean, if you sold here and then you're like, oh, I could have sold here, but then now it's down here. It's like, you just, if you bought here, you did well, and then move on. That's kind of how I look at it. Now the timing for selling, it appears to have changed. So one of the things that I've, and by Dream Boy, thanks for joining. One of the things that I've really noticed is that it used to be, and I know Bryce Comics did a video about this maybe like a year or 2 years ago. That was really good, and it was about like the timing of prices that for what books sold for based on different events. And the event that was always the biggest trigger was the first trailer. The first trailer was when you would sell a book, but now things seem to have moved earlier. People are buying and speculating like the instant they hear about something, and prices are jumping then. And so it does seem like things have shifted earlier. But the rule of thumb previously was the first trailer. But yeah, let's see. yeah, Overstreet advisors. That was one of the things we were talking about, where it's like it seems strange that the prices are so low in there, and it's like if they try and basically trying to get the prices lower. I think I have the same question, Mickey. I wanted to know if you might have any contrasting perspective. Well, I mean, I feel like, I mean, if you watch Mickey on my channel, we seem to approach things different ways, but we end up at very similar answers. I've been talking about that with him. I find it really interesting that we take different pathways, but often end up with the same answers, which to me is good. It tells me that we're maybe on the right path then. Overstreet's importance is everything found in the guide except pricing. The articles are quite good. Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that is good in there is just the quick references for books. I mean, just like, I'm sure everybody's seen them, but I don't know how much it comes through. But, you've got all these little details that go with them. Like you have things like first appearances or maybe some key cover artists and that kind of stuff. That type of information is useful. And that's why I keep the book around. But that type of information doesn't change year over year. And that's why I don't feel I really have this need to buy an updated copy, because the pricing really doesn't matter. The pricing doesn't change enough. Do you think Magneto covers will do as well as Doom covers? I see a lot of Doom books moving on cover alone. That's an interesting thought. I'm trying to think if there are. I feel like the Doom covers, there's just something about them that often they're drawn better, or there's something about Doom as a character. I don't know if it's because of the color or what, but I mean, maybe. I think the other thing with Doom, though, is that his keys have gotten so expensive that people have moved on to covers. It's, that's kind of I think the trend that's probably happening there too, is that, Fantastic Four 4 or 5 and 6, and then what's his third appearance, like 10, those have all they're just so expensive, and so then people start moving on to like Marvel Superheroes number 20, which I think is probably like the best Doom cover of the Silver Age, and other things like that. Let's see. Don't wait for a trailer, movie comes out. So yeah, you don't want to wait for the movie to come out, but by the time the movie comes out, it's usually kind of too late. That punches up to 9100 and a 401. Oh, and the new one, it's up to 9100. Yeah, I would buy, like, if I had the money, I would buy every copy possible for 9100 at a 40. Let's see. I don't know if I've shown it a number of times on the channel, but it has been a little while. So if you haven't seen that book before. So this is Punch Comics number 12. If you haven't seen this one before, this is 1945. This is very early for this type of content. That's one of the things that I think is really appealing about that book too, is that it's kind of like a trendsetter type book. This run is really from Chesler, is really a trendsetter type of book. Now the Punch Comics run I've talked about, it's really interesting. So you can see all the different covers that are part of that run. It goes issue 1, 2, and then it jumps to 9. So there is no 3 through 8 if you're wondering. You see how it starts with these kind of like fantasy, sci-fi, hero type covers. Then it jumps to this one. This is one of the other really big covers from the run. It's crazy. It's like this guy that was drawing a sketch artist, and the ring that the people that he was drawing ended up, coming in and killing him. So like, that's a really brutal cover. Then you've got this guy who's like, I call him kind of like a prototype Cyclops, where he's got this eye that does like everything. And so you've got the guy with the eye here, he's here, he is here, and I can't tell if he's on, and he's on this cover. So, but yeah, then you've got, it just jumps around. These are kind of like these detective type stories. Then you've got this one, which is another cool skull cover, Punch Comics 11. Then you got Punch Comics 13, which is one I really like. I hope to get a copy of this sometime. I like these giant hand type covers. And then it's like you get to 16 and 17, and they're these really cartoony covers, which I had never seen the interior until I'm gonna blank on her handle. I want to make sure I get it right. Anna Love, I think, on Instagram. Let me see. I'm looking it up real quick just so I can make sure I give her the right shout out, because that's one of the things that really helped me on getting into the golden age was Instagram, because there are people that have just some incredible collections out there. Anna Love is her name on Instagram, and she has an incredible collection, and it includes like multiple copies of Punch Comics 12, multiple copies of Chamber of Chills 19, just incredible stuff like that. But she showed the interior in one of her posts, and it's stuff like this, like from issue 16 and 17. It's really like kiddie content, which is interesting because you have these super violent covers, and then on the interior, it's child, little kid cartoons. And so it's a really weird dichotomy. It's a really weird split that you get there. So we had some Star Wars books. That's a strong sale for Star Wars 1. Let's see. So yeah, 1,111 for a 9.6 Star Wars 1. It's down quite a bit, but that's a strong sale for this book right now. It had been getting weaker, but I like the Star Wars books. I think, if they come down in price, I think that's a good time to pick them up, because Star Wars isn't going anywhere. It's some of the most like serious fans out there are Star Wars fans. And so I never think that those, if you're getting those coming back down to some good prices, are never a bad deal. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know about FF6. I mean, it got really expensive. I haven't looked at the prices a lot real recently to see if they've come back some, but it's a cool book. I mean, you've got second appearance of Submariner, second appearance of Doctor Doom. You've got the first Marvel supervillain team up. You got a lot going on with it. So it's a good book, but it did get pretty pricey. Yeah, in this comment here, I was wondering, I was trying to think, like, what are some great Magneto covers? And I was struggling to think of any. You know, I mean, like, you've got some, like, Avengers 47 is a pretty cool Magneto cover. I mean, X-Men 4 is a great Magneto cover, but he's not the focal point of that cover. I'm trying to think of any where he's like the big focal point of the cover. I think the more online influencers talk about it, the more it's going to spike for the trailer drops. I mean, that's definitely true. It's like anything, you know, if people talk about something, it gets more attention, and then other people go out and find it. I've had people mention to me that it may be partially my fault that some of the Golden Age stuff has gone up, and I'm hurting my own ability to pick up some of these books because I talk about them so much, and it makes people aware of them. And with the Golden Age, especially when you're talking about things like auctions, here, I'll jump back to put that back up again. With the Golden Age, when you're talking about things like auctions, it's just one other person there, and it can have a serious impact on the sales price for a book, especially when they're rare books like that, where you maybe only have a few bidders, but you throw one more bidder in, and that book only comes up for sale once or twice a year. That can have a very, you know, serious impact on sales. So that's definitely something I try to make sure I'm aware of. And so, cause I don't, my goal is not to try to, like, impact prices on books or anything like that, but I do want to make people aware of these books from the Golden Age. I mean, that's one of the big reasons why I started the channel, was because I didn't see really many channels out there or any at the time that focused on these older books, on these kind of like Golden Age and bigger Silver Age books. And so that was part of this, is that I wanted to make people aware of them, because there's so many really cool, amazing covers and comics from that time period that, you know, like the ones that I have back here. This is this Frank Frazetta Famous Funnies run. And I didn't even know that existed when I was a kid. You know, that's something I learned about maybe 3 years ago. And so it's something where if you don't even know they're there, then how do you really even know that you want it? And then when I first saw them, I was like, oh, those are so awesome. It was from Instagram. It was, I was following someone on Instagram that goes by Comic Book Nerd Girl, and she has some incredible books. And she had a Famous Funnies 214, the red one that's in the middle. I think that's what's up there. Yeah, in the middle up there. And I was just like, that's such an incredible cover. I need to try to get a copy of that book. And so if people don't know about them, they don't really know that it's something that might be interesting to them. Yeah, so the photojournals, yep, I talk about those quite a bit. I've got those right next to me too. So these are here, see if I can make myself full screen for a second. Yeah, so these are these photojournals, if you haven't seen these before. So these were put together by Ernst and Mary Gerber. This one is the K through Z. There's another one that's A through J. And basically, if you watch my channel, you've seen me show these. If you don't, then, or if you haven't seen it before, basically the inside is just like the picture of every Golden Age cover. It's not every one. There are some that aren't in there, but for the most part, I mean, there's two of these. It's a pretty thick book. So they have a lot of covers in there. And so if you're interested in getting into the Golden Age, that was one of the first things I bought when I started getting into Golden Age stuff, was just so something I could flip through and start to familiarize myself with some of the different titles and see which ones I was interested in. Because there are some that are so rare that if you aren't constantly watching auctions and things like I am, you won't even know that those books are out there. And even with that, I might, like, there are runs, like some of these like early Blue Beetle type runs that you might see one come up in auction once every 4 months. You know, just one book from that run, not necessarily like that one book, but one book from that run. And so it can be really tough to find some of those. And that's why books like that are really helpful. Which Golden Age title? I would say the one that's surprising to me is The Shadow. And it's just because, at least my understanding is, Batman is based on The Shadow. So he's like a precursor to Batman. So you'd think that would have made him, from like the pulps and that kind of stuff. And so that would then you'd think that would make him a pretty popular character. But then there's some really incredible cover art and everything from the Shadow run that they really just largely get overlooked. And so I don't know why that one specifically doesn't get very much attention, but the Shadow definitely gets overlooked quite a bit. Picked up a 3.5 Crime Does Not Pay 24. I think, is that the one where the guy has the woman's head on the stove? I'm pretty sure that's, but we'll check. I'm pretty sure that here, I'll share this again, but I'm pretty sure that's what that one is. That's why, like, when you have this much information in your head, you try to, yeah, it is. Okay. So you try to, like, sometimes I have the pictures remembered. Sometimes I have sometimes I have the numbers remembered, but just something that reminds me. So first appearance of Mr. Crime, this book. Yeah. So there's the cover there. It's just, it's a nuts cover. It's a nuts cover, because a lot of the time what you'll notice with these Golden Age kind of like horror or crime covers is that it's implied violence. It's like the violence hasn't quite happened yet, but it's about to. But sometimes you have a few of these where it's straight up just really brutal violence. So like a book that I recently picked up was Underworld Crime 7, which is one of my favorite crime covers of all time. And so it's these guys with this like hot poker that are, basically they're like interrogating her to get this guy to speak, or going to torture her to get this guy to speak. But this one, you can see it's implied violence. They haven't done it yet. But that other one, it's basically her head is on the stove. So yeah. But yeah, exactly. It just takes two passionate bidders. I mean, especially when you're talking about a rare book. It's odd. Sometimes it happens with not rare books where you get these, like it was like 3 weeks ago, there was a 9/8 of The Killing Joke that sold for, it was like $1,200 or $1,400. And that it's like a $350 to $400 book. It's just like, what is happening? And I don't understand how that happens sometimes, but every once in a while it does. And it's tough for me to really understand why sometimes that goes the way it does. World wants to know my take on Howard the Duck books. I mean, Fear 19 is probably the one that I would get, because you've got the Man-Thing book and then first appearance of Howard the Duck, if you wanted one, because there's definitely some speculation too around Man-Thing, so keys around that character are decent. But I don't imagine they're going to be reinventing Howard the Duck in the MCU. I could be wrong, but I don't think they are. Yeah, the one that I often would think of is Journey into Mystery 109. I couldn't remember the number, but I'm assuming that's the one where Magneto is like taking the hammer from Thor. But yeah, I agree. I think the market is bouncing back because Amazing Fantasy 15 3.5 just sold for 50,000. I have a 6.0. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily take one sale as a gospel for AF15, because in general that book has been trending down pretty hard. I mean, it's a strong book. Like, obviously it's like the biggest Silver Age key that exists, but it like everything else got a little out of hand with its pricing, because I think a week ago a 5.0 sold for like 50 or 54 or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I would be cautious with AF15 until it gets down. I was saying before, they felt like it would probably get down around 12,000 a point. I think it's gotten a little below that, around 11,000 a point. So that's what I'd be looking for with AF15. Golden Age Gurus, DC Comics started the increase in GA. Oh, DS Comics. You can yeah, I mean, I watch Golden Age Guru too. I love watching his claim sales and everything, and I always look forward to the segments. Like, I watch Comic Tom. I look forward to the segments when Golden Age Guru is on there when they talk about Golden Age books. So, yeah, I'm sure he did have some some impact on it too. Are you concerned about the future of the hobby? Coming up though. Yeah, so that's one of those things that I feel like we've got a number of years before we maybe reach that point, but I'm not sure if it kind of is that, like, I got back into comics. Well, let's say, so I got back into comics after I'd been out for, I don't know, like 2 decades, basically. And so it was something that as I got older, it got the kind of like the history and everything behind it got really interesting to me again. You know, I got back into it before the pandemic, so it wasn't like I wasn't like the pandemic is what drove me into it. And so it's one of those things I think it'll be interesting to see if it's just that comics trend older, but as people get older, they get interested in it because of that history that's behind it, history behind characters that they end up liking and that kind of stuff. Or if it's that it just keeps trending older. You don't have newer people joining the hobby. It's really hard to tell, you know, personally, from my opinion. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. But I think it's possible that as people just get older, it's something that they end up getting interested in just because of that, like the tangible history to it. And then also the fact that you then have the money to be able to purchase some of these things, because they've gotten, a lot of the stuff is so expensive. My left arm saw major keys drop like they did the last few months, but they're starting to bounce back. Yeah, well, I mean, but they also had never spiked like they did either. And so that's one of the things that I know ETA Nick talked about this as well. And that's why I always try to mention this, is that, when you're talking about books like, let's see, which one do we want to, let's do X-Men one. ETA Nick, it's always an interesting person to talk about because I always really liked watching his channel, but he was very vocal about his opinions on things. But basically one of the things he would often say is, and actually I want to talk about this one specifically, so I'll talk about that a bit. But so make sure I'm sharing everything right. So you see how, you had this, this book was trending up consistently for years. And if you just extend that out, it's probably like here. Now, the difference is, like, if the X-Men are in Marvel now or in the MCU now, does that add something to it so it goes up a little more or whatever, that kind of stuff. But you have this just insane spike, and which isn't sustainable. And so it's not surprising that you see the books retreating some. And now one thing, because I had somebody comment about this, because I talked about an X-Men one in I don't remember if it was a top 10 video or something, and somebody commented about this specific sale, this 1,100 or 11,511. So the funny thing, it was in, are these books ready to, is it these books reaching points where you can buy? That's what I was talking about. And actually the price that I had estimated for this book that I felt it would be getting down to, if it was where it should be about now, was like 11,560. It was something like that. So it was really close. But then when you go and look at this, I am like 95% certain that this was a scam sale. And so let's see if I can find that one. So I'll show you why I think this was a scam sale. So we can go to sold listings. And yeah, so here it is. So this was an auction. And that's my dog, so you can hear my dog barking. So this is an auction. Now, at first you're like, oh, this person has 52 sales. That seems very reasonable. But when you go and look at their, well, one, they had this one here. Now, this person has actually said that they were a scammer. They felt like they were a scammer because they said they were going on vacation. But if you look at their items for sale, and I can't say for sure if that's what this is, but this is what I've seen with scammers before. They sell a bunch of these SanDisk, hard, like thumb drives. And so basically they sell a bunch of these to get their rating up because they're cheap, and they probably buy them from themselves with like a fake account or someone else's account or whatever. And now this person's up to 52. And now we throw in this massive item. and now you've got, an X-Men 1 that sells for 11,511. And so I think this one probably went low because a lot of bidders saw this and said, I'm not going to bid on that book. Now, it could be real. It's very possible this could be a real sale, but this really is a red flag to me. And so if you see this kind of thing, if you see a book, pop up for sale, check the sold that you're really interested in, check their sold listings. If you see this, I would be very cautious about it. That is I would not recommend bidding on a book like that. So just something that I'd been meaning to, I was thinking about making a video about it, but since that came up, I thought I would just talk about it there. All right. Let's see what other questions we got. If you're valuing books based on cover alone, which Black Costume Spider-Man would you buy? I would buy ASM 252. That's my favorite cover for the Black Costumes. I like the AF-15 homage, so that's my favorite one personally. I just remember comics were safer than the stock market in 10 years. I mean, it's tough to. I like comics versus stock investing personally, but there are different reasons. Part of it is that I just enjoy them. I think it's a fun thing to buy and sell. It's a fun thing to invest. I like having them in my hands, and so it makes me more interested in it. It makes me willing to spend more time in it. I don't know if I would say it's necessarily safer. It might be, but there's risks there's risks in comics too. You can overpay for something and then you're way behind the 8 ball right from the start. Whereas with a stock, you're paying the price that it is at that moment. So there are positives and negatives. Oh, and yeah, thanks a lot, Stephen, for the super chat. Comics with Onyx. Thanks for all the valuable information you provide to the community. Your efforts are very much appreciated, my friend. Yeah, so if you haven't checked out his channel, I definitely recommend going and checking out his channel. Follow him on Instagram too. He has some incredible books. He just put up, it was a picture, it was yesterday or the day before of his top keys, and he has an incredible collection. I definitely recommend going and checking out his channel and his Instagram page. And agreed on the Shadow. I have 2 through 6, and I know no one wants them. Yeah, I don't know why it is, but that specific run just doesn't seem to get a lot of attention. So let's see here. Just 110 is a great Magneto cover. What was Spider-Man 101? That's a great cover too. I agree. I would really want All-Star Comics 8. Yeah, All-Star Comics 8 is a great book. Alex Comic Hoarder, he picked one up a little while ago that he showed on his channel. The fact that Wonder Woman isn't on the cover, I think, hurts that one a little bit. Like if you had the cover for Sensation Comics 1 as her first appearance, I think that book would be worth significantly more. But yeah, those really big Golden Age keys. The tough thing with those is that they're safe. They are very, very safe investments. They tend to hold their value really well. They're good stores of money. But if you're looking for something that's like a return on investment, they aren't as good. So if you look at like Tech 27, Batman 1, Superman 1, Action 1, they get a lot of attention because when they come up for sale, they sell for huge amounts of money. But outside of the last year where things have really spiked like crazy, you would have long windows of time where the book, maybe it sells for $500,000 in 2014, and then in 2019 it sells for $600,000. It's like, oh, it went up $100,000, but it was 6 years, and it went up 25%. That's horrible in return on investment if you're talking about investment. And so it's tricky. It can be tricky with the Golden Age because with those massive keys, because the pool of buyers is very, very small. That's something I really like that ETA Nick has talked about before, is that he talks about like the buyer pyramid. And, as you go down in price, you have more and more buyers. And as you go up in price, you have less and less. And so when you're up at that peak where you have the people that have the ability or are willing to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on books, there are not very many of them. And so it can be tricky on how things price out there. Or the other way he was using that as an example was, I remember it was last year when Giant Size X-Men 1 was just blowing up. And there was a 9/8 that sold for like 80,000 or something. And then the next week or like 2 weeks later, one sold for like 45. And it was, it's like you had probably two people that were looking for that book and they were both willing to spend $85,000. But then this guy got his book. Now this one bid on the one that came up the next time and he got it for 45 because now this guy wasn't bidding. And so that's some of the tricky stuff you can have with those really expensive, really high grade books. And I really like this book, this Tales to Astonish 44 that's on the screen right now. I like the cover. I like the appearance. I like that character in the MCU. I like the Ant-Man characters as well. But that's First Wasp if you're not familiar. So let's see what that one ends up going for. So this is it's a poor grade. So let's see, the back cover is missing. So it's a 0.5, missing the back cover. But that's a great entry level copy for someone because this book is extremely expensive in pretty much any grade. So this means somebody picked up that one for $139, which I haven't looked at prices, but that's a tough book to get for around $100. So I feel like just as definitely like even a placeholder or something, if you were looking for that book, that's not a bad deal at all. I just think that great covers on Silver Age books are overlooked. Once you get them slabbed, that's all you have if you're a collector. Yeah, the way to look at, so for me, at least with expense, because I've had people ask that a number of times where, they'll say, well, you can't read it now and that kind of thing. That's like, well, I don't really want to handle those books. I don't want to hold those books. I don't want to flip through those books. They're very expensive, and any damage that I potentially add to that book, hurts the value. If I just, my dog runs up while I have a Newfoundland that drools like crazy, and watch, she runs down the stairs and shakes her head, and all of a sudden I have a big, drool spot on this $1,000 book. I don't want that, and so if I really want to look at interiors, you have options to look at interiors. There are sites you can get that are either free or that you can pay subscriptions to read the interiors if you want. And so for expensive books like that, I don't have a desire to read them. I flip through any raw book I get. I'm always flipping through it. So because I'm always checking for completion, that kind of thing. And I definitely take notice when I'm doing it. I like to look for cool splash pages because you can get some incredible splash pages in Silver Age and in the Golden Age, especially in Batman. Batman, you can have some awesome splash pages in there. And so that's fun to do that, but I don't want to go back through it again. I'm nervous enough. I sent in a Crime Suspense Stories 22. That's a pretty nice condition copy in my recent submission. And I was terrified holding that book. I wash my hands beforehand. I don't like to use gloves. I like to use my hands just for having better dexterity and everything. But, I wash my hands all the time, but I'm almost shaking holding a book like that because I'm afraid I'm going to do something wrong, and I'm counting pages and all of that. And so, yeah, it's just when you get to a certain point in the value of a book, I don't really want to hold it. But that's actually something that's an interesting point. And again, thank you for everybody that's commenting and in here. We're over 100 people, which is incredible. So this has been a lot of fun. But I talked about this in one of my recent videos, was why people get books graded. And now I know I had one comment that said that they did get their books graded for protection, but for me, the protection is kind of like the lowest end for getting your book graded. The main reasons to get your book graded, the way I see it, is presentation and to define value. Because grading, it gives you, one, the actual grade of the book, but you also have the book evaluated that it's complete, and the book evaluated that it has restoration or not. And now these things aren't perfect. Obviously things can be missed, all of that, but it gets you close, and it gives people confidence about what they're getting with that book. Whereas with a raw book, it could be, it could be almost anything. And so, but because what I've noticed, and I talked about this in the video, is that there's a lot of opportunity for damage when you're getting a book graded. So you've got the shipping that you're sending either to your presser or whatever, or to CGC, the pressing itself. If you're getting the book pressed and clean, there's potential for damage there. And that's why you want to use somebody experienced, but the potential is always there. But then the handling during grading. I mean, in my last submission, I sent in somewhere around 85 books, I think, something like that total after it was all said and done. 3 of them had additional damage to the spine. I had a Detective Comics 359, the first Barbara Gordon as Batgirl, that had a spine split that was like this when I sent it in. It was this when I got it back. It was above the staple. It detached the bottom staple. And I know that was somebody ripping the book open too fast when they're grading. And I had a Golden Age, I had a Golden Age book. I had this book, Manhunt. I can't remember which issue it is, 9 or something like that, that they split further down the spine. And then I had one other one that I can't remember offhand what it was. And so there is a lot of risk there just in handling during grading, especially if you have spines that are fragile. But then just the slabbing process. I've seen books where they've been pinched inside the case. It can happen. These things are very real possibilities. Now, in my last submission, out of 80 books or whatever, I had those 3 that had a bit of spine damage, but I didn't have anything else where it was really damaged inside the case that I can remember offhand. But I have seen other books that I've had where the books will shift around and you can end up with edge damage. The example I gave, and I could probably find one if you gave me a minute or two, but Giant Size X-Men 1, that square bound book, when it is in those CGC cases, you really do need to pay attention when you're buying that book if it's graded, because a lot of times the right edge will have damage along the edge because it shifts in there. And it just must be that with Giant Size X-Men 1, that the page sticks out past the interior pages a little, the cover sticks out past the interior pages some, and it just takes damage if it shifts around. And I've seen some really bad edge damage with that book. And so there are risks there. I think the value of getting the book, assigned a grade and it is more beneficial than the risks that are there, but you have to be aware that those risks are there. And if you just wanted to keep your book safe, if that was the goal, something like a Mylar and the acid-free fullbacks, that's what I would do. Picked up some old Heritage catalogs of $1 bin. Action Comics 1. Yeah, it's crazy looking at some of those old prices. 40 or 60,000 for a 4.5. And thank you, Victor, for the super chat. Thank you for answering my question and questions. Please do this again. Yeah, I'm hoping that I can try to do this. When I was on Como's channel, he was saying, he was like, I'm going to try to do this every week. And I keep telling myself I want to do that too. But yeah, hopefully I gave StreamYard my money, so I need to try to use it as much as I can. So yeah. My favorite crime cover is still Crime Suspense 22. Yeah, it's one of my favorite covers, definitely from the Golden Age. And if for anybody that's not, I can show a copy of that one too. So if you're not familiar with Crime Suspense Stories 22, it's a Johnny Craig cover. And it's one of the most violent ones that's out there. Well, this is the reprint. Let's see here. So, they look the same, but yeah. So, but yeah, was this 1954. This is like right before the Comics Code Authority was put in place. You can see here, used in Senate investigation of juvenile delinquency, axe decapitation cover. So yeah, it's a brutal cover, and it's just crazy that these were the books that were being given to kids or sold to kids. X-Men 50 looks better. Yeah. The green label probably looks really nice with X-Men 50. What book was it? I had one that I felt like a qualified looked really nice with it. ETA Mick, I miss him and his Outliers high priced books. Yeah, I always liked watching ETA Nick's regular content. I feel like the comic community definitely lost some really good information and insight when he stopped making videos. But yeah, I don't get the impression he's planning on ever coming back. He seemed pretty grumpy and done when it was all done. So he seemed happy to be done with it. Let's see here. Always important to look at 2019 and 2020 values and talk about the market. Yeah. Oh, that's what I got sidetracked. That's what ETA Nick had been talking about, was that if you're talking about prices dropping, but not talking about where they were 2 years ago, you're kind of being like dishonest about what prices are at. Because yeah, in most cases, even if they were dropping, they are up massively from where they were. Now that's not true with everything anymore. Like I showed in that one other video, and then with like the Hulk 180, it's really retreated to kind of like in line to where you would expect it to be. And so there are definitely books that are out there that have reached those points. And I think that that's when you really want to start looking. If you've been waiting, if you've been on the sidelines and thinking like, I'm going to wait for prices to come down, that's kind of around the price that I would be looking. EC, there's no comparison with quality they had. Oh yeah. I mean, their lineup of artists was just ridiculous. I mean, it was just incredible artists that were at EC. I was talking about this with Como, that for me, Jack Davis is my favorite EC artist. I mean, Johnny Craig has like the shock value covers. So like Vault of Horror 35 is actually my favorite. It's always tough to say what's your favorite, pre-code cover, that kind of thing. But if you haven't seen Vault of Horror 35, it's a crazy cover. It's this Christmas cover where he's got this coffin and it says "Merry Christmas to my wife." I mean, it's nuts. It's like just the concept of this, coming up with this as a cover, to me is just ridiculous. And so this is probably my favorite pre-code horror cover, because I think the concept is just so crazy. That's what I really like with those types of covers. But Jack Davis, he did, let's see, the one that I always like to point to is Tales of Suspense, number 33. Or not Tales of Suspense, Tales from the Crypt, sorry. So you've got Tales from the Crypt number 33 here, which is the origin of the Crypt Keeper, but just the level of detail that he puts into this cover, just all the details on the mummy, the wraps, everything is just, it's so much above the other artists at EC at the time, in my opinion. And so I really like those Jack Davis covers. Let's see. Oh yeah, I mean, I have my stocks retirement stuff too. It's not all comics, but I enjoy comics. I enjoy the comics side of it. Yeah, comics are an original American art form. It is really, I think it's really interesting, because at one point I was wondering, I was like, I wonder what that's like in like other countries, and it's like, oh, they don't really have that. I mean, the ones that they have are ones that were printed in the US and then sent overseas. Let's see. Oh, the I-beam. His name is Master Key. I didn't know that. So yeah, that I'll try to lock that into my memory. But yeah, it seems like he has a wide range of powers with that eye. Yeah, so X-ray, heat, and paralytic vision. I just bought an Avengers 57 5.5 for $380. What are your thoughts on Phase 1 through 3 Marvel characters' first appearances and classic covers? I mean, part of it is just looking at what they were beforehand. That's how you can, I feel like you can look at that. I mean, Avengers 57 has always been a key book. It's arguably one of the best looking, I mean, it all depends on your taste, but it's one of the best looking covers from the Avengers run. That cover is incredible. And so it's always been a book that people have wanted. Vision has always been a character people have been interested in and have followed. And so just because Phase 1 through 3 is gone doesn't necessarily mean that those books are now worthless. Comics existed well before the MCU, and Vision wasn't brought in right at the beginning or anything like that. And so, but again, it's looking at historical prices and trying to make your best judgment on them. But yeah, no, I love that cover. The cover to 57 is incredible. Yeah, so this was around when that Wasp book came up. Yeah, and first Ant-Man in costume, issue 35 is a great book too. Let's see. Yeah, I saw that. So yes, I saw that Bryce Comics, he posted that he picked up a Hulk 1. It was like Hulk 1 through 6, AF-15, and an All-Star 8. I mean, that is a hefty set of books. And when he said the grade estimates, I mean, those are some big books. I think it was like a 4.0 for the All-Star 8 and a 3.0 or something for the AF-15. I mean, there were some there's some big books. It is interesting that you say that. They do now. It's actually so sometimes they have the full graders notes, other times they have the link. Let's see if they've since I'm not logged in, I'm not sure if I can access it. So yeah, so here you go. So in that listing, they have, it says view. Well, let me make sure I'm sharing the screen. Yep. Okay. So it says view the certification for CGC ID. This is one of the things I noticed maybe like a week or two ago, and I was like, that is incredible that they added this in already. This is exactly what they should have done, and I'm glad they did, because I was talking about this in a recent video where there was a book that looked incredible, and I was like, this had to have been graded recently. There's got to be something wrong with it. And it ended up had a fully split spine, extra staples, all that kind of stuff, because it was graded at 1.5, but it looked like a, I don't know, like a 6 or a 7. But yeah, so if we, so if you click on that, it takes you to CGC's page. You've got brittleness, chipping to cover, heavy cover, tanning, moderate bends to cover, moderate creasing to cover, staple tears. So yeah, Heritage has already done this. Some issues, some listings I've seen that they actually put the label notes right here. Other ones have the link, but yes, they do have that now, which I think is a huge positive. I'm really glad that they do that. Yeah, because that was, if you watch my prior video, that was one of my biggest issues with what CGC had changed recently. I know a lot of people got really worked up about the acetate covers, but I didn't really care about the acetate covers. I mean, it was something where it was like, yeah, they didn't really go about it the right way, and they finally have kind of got it right, I think. But the label notes, I think, really is something that hurts collectors in the hobby. It hurts people in the hobby because it's making it harder to get that information. And so that's something where I think it's really great that sites like Heritage have done that. I don't know about Comic Link. I don't know about Comic Connect. I don't know if they've started linking those two or not. I can try to people give me crap when I have to count pages. I mean, yeah, I count pages on everything, every book I get, because I've had way too many books. I mean, and I buy mostly online, so I have to count them when they get here. But I've had just way too many books show up that have missing pages or cutouts or whatever, and so you've got to do it. It should be the first thing you do when you get a book. I'm not sure what that was in reference to. Is there anything you can do to mitigate damage at grading? So you can, if you're worried about the spine or a certain area, you can put like a sticky note on the book and say, like fragile spine or something like that to try to give them warning. That's what I would recommend doing. That's probably your best chance. Now, I know some people like to ship in Mylars. I ship in whatever I was storing it in. But I've heard, I think it was from CGC's head grader. I think he said that the biggest risk to your book is when they remove it and when they put it back in the bag. And you can understand that, when you're pushing something in, all that kind of stuff, when you're taking out, there's chances of it catching on stuff. And so I have heard that Mylars, while you might think they're giving the book more protection when you're sending it there, they are more likely to damage your book when you're putting it back in, because they're more sharp edges. And if the Mylar is torn anywhere, it could really, cut your book or damage your book. So I have seen that a lot of people do try to send them in this, like the cheaper bags. I feel like maybe that's partially just to not spend the money on the Mylar because you're losing it forever. But But yeah, I think probably using just like a regular poly bag and a note on there if you're concerned about the book. Yeah, there are definitely movement in the inner well is a thing, and so and the weird thing is I don't notice that. Now, granted, I haven't had very many CBCS books. I have some, but I haven't had a lot of them, so I don't have really a large enough sample set to choose from. But anytime I've had a CBCS book, I have not seen them move inside the inner well, and so they do something different than CGC does, and CGC should try to adopt that, because I don't like the movement in the inner well. A little scared of sending my Daredevil run. The first 3 came back okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like for the most part, it's okay. But again, I always remember it's people. There's risks there. Hey Ryan, been watching, soaking all the knowledge. You know, yeah, oh yeah, this has just been fun, just talking, answering questions. I wanted to try to take advantage of having this auction going on and trying out doing a live stream, because this is my first time doing a live stream. I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit, because I've been on other live streams with other channels, but then you're sharing the talk time. So this is the first time I'm talking by myself this whole time. If I have a chance to buy a coverless X-Men, what price did you put on? So I would check. I mean, honestly, I would check GPA, and they usually do have, if there was a coverless one that sold, they'll often have data for that. That is one of my biggest recommendations for people, whether it's GPA or cover price or go collect. If you are buying books that are at that level, whether it's just over $100 even, you should have one of those services. They will pay for themselves very quickly, because I mean, especially if you're buying really expensive books, if you're buying a book that's say $1,000, $100 overpay, is equal to a full year of pricing service, from any of those services, and even more than a year because cover price is a little cheaper than GPA and go collect. So it's like I tell people that it's saving money on the wrong things. And so it is almost invaluable if you're in this hobby and you're just buying anything it doesn't even matter if you're selling, just from the buying perspective. If you're collecting books, it's invaluable to have that information. Yeah, ETA Nick would deal with Comic Link, and I think that was largely because they have a pretty big audience, and they have low fees. I mean, it's 10% fees. So CBCS or CGC for customer service accuracy. Like I said, I feel like CGC and CBCS grade very, very similar. There are differences. I've talked about this in some videos where CBCS tends to grade a little easier on the low end than CGC does, but for the most part, they're very similar. Customer service, I haven't had to deal with customer service, but if I'm parroting what I've heard from other people, CGC's customer service is fantastic. CBCS's customer service is the worst thing on the planet. So I've heard it's just, you hope nothing goes wrong if you have to deal with CBCS customer service. And so, yeah, I mean, that is what I've heard, but I haven't had to experience it. So let's see here. Why would anyone buy a coverless, no grade book? So, I mean, part of it is the cost of it's usually for major keys. You have things like Daredevil 1, Tales of Suspense 39, Amazing Fantasy 15, Amazing Spider-Man 1, those kinds of things, where the interior is still very, very valuable. Thousands of dollars typically. And also, I know Otto with 3 Men in a Basement, he talks about, because he's a big, if you watch his channel, he's a big coverless collector. And basically the way that they're described is that the opening splash page is considered like the second cover. And so that's why those opening splash pages are often just as nice as that cover. And so that's why they can still be really presentable books. They're great reader copies. If you're looking for a reader copy, you're never going to have to worry about damaging it more. And so that would be the reason why someone might buy a coverless book like that. Where do you get your comics pressed and cleaned? So the presser that I if you watch my videos from a few months ago where I was getting books back from CGC and I just sent them out again, I use someone that goes by The Comic Book Presser on Instagram. I've also got some books that are with Impressive Comics, Gary Kendra. And so, but The Comic Book Presser is the one that I've primarily used for mine. But yeah, no, I've been really happy with his pressing. Let's see, so Vault of Horror 23 coming up. Let's see, what did that one end up selling for? Let's check that, because we're into Weird Science. I don't know how far back Weird Science. If you're looking for some cool science fiction covers, Weird Science has some really cool stuff. I had been thinking of looking at this one. They have a lot of, I don't know if this is a Wally Wood cover or not, but they have some great Wally Wood covers and that kind of thing. Let's see. Trying to jump back here. Okay, Vault of Horror 23. So this one went for $336. Yeah, so yeah, it all just depends on the cover content. You'll find that with EC books. There are certain books that are just, you kind of refer to it as like cover keys, you know, and that's what a lot of the golden age is, because the first appearances are just so expensive, just prohibitively expensive. And so people start looking for other things. And so a lot of times it's, you know, what's that cool cover content? And when you're talking about horror and sci-fi and that, the cover content really is king. Let's see. Yeah, CBCS slabs are bulletproof. I agree. Their slabs feel better. They feel stronger. They feel more like I do not disagree at all about that. The main issue for me as somebody that also sells books is that there's less demand for CBCS graded books, and so they tend to sell for less and they take longer to sell. That's just been my experience. But yeah, no, I like their slabs. I think they're great. I thought we were supposed to get those magazine slabs like 4 months ago. Like they announced it, and then it still hasn't happened yet. I don't know what's going on there. I would love to see that, because the CGC magazine slabs are just the worst. They're like really fragile, and there's nothing good about the CGC magazine slabs. I already answered the pressed and cleaned comment. Let's see. Do key books based on covers only, Service of 4, Batman 251, 20 maintain their value? I mean, definitely. I mean, they actually, from what I've seen, they tend to be kind of those consistent gainers. Like Batman 251 was largely just one of these that just kept trending up. So yeah, no, I think they definitely do. Now, Marvel Superheroes 20 is one that really exploded when people started speculating on Doom. And I think part of that was because the other Doom covers got or Doom keys got so expensive that people started moving to other things. That one's not just a Doom key. You have first Valeria Doom in there, and I think it's first Doom solo story too. But yeah, it is, that one is mostly a cover buy. I buy 70s DC horror. Yeah, the 70s DC horror is extremely affordable. I don't know if it's ever going to catch on as something that people are really hunting for or not, but yeah, it is definitely much more affordable than the Golden Age stuff. Yeah, it depends on the artist. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, because Silver Surfer 4 is a Buscema cover, and he has some incredible covers. I am always impressed with his covers. And Steve Barak leaving it was tough for CBCS. He was a great resource. Yeah, I don't have any background on that. I don't know if he left because he wanted to, or he left because they wanted to make some changes. I have no clue what the reason was behind that. But I see him post on Instagram now for My Comic Shop, because he's one of the, I think he's the head grader over at My Comic Shop now, though. But yeah, unless there are any other questions, I think I've finally caught up to the chat again. We've been on here for a little over 2 hours now, so I really appreciate everybody that's been sticking in the chat with me. We still have 95 people in here. This has been a lot of fun. I will definitely be doing this again. I really enjoyed this, and really enjoyed hanging out with everybody. Now, we will see if I actually end this broadcast correctly. I may not. This is, like I said, this is my first time doing the live stream, so I'm gonna try to see if I do it right, but we'll see. But yeah, thanks again, everybody, for checking in, for commenting. It's been a lot of fun, a great 2 hours, and I hope you guys got something out of this too, and enjoyed watching, just having the auction stream by while we talked about some comic stuff. So again, thanks everybody for checking out the stream. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. And I've got videos coming out usually 2 to 3 times a week, so make sure to check those videos out. So thanks again, and I hope to see you in the next stream.